Hello everyone, my name is Bob, and I'm a filthy centrist.
Hello, Bob.
Hello, Bob.
Ugh, such a filthy centrist. Why can't they just pick a side? With the help of White Sith Male, today we are going to be dissecting a video by Peter Coffins on the subject of centrism. For somebody with such a large channel, I don't quite understand what he's done because I've never really looked into him before, to have such low views per video for a channel of his size.
Hey you, it's Peter, and this is that current events thing I said I was going to do every weeknight last night.
Well, hello there, Peter.
Both sides were equally bad. That's what many people are saying.
The aggressive morons that were out for blood and to pick a fight? Yes, most definitely. The fascist Antifa, as well as the hateful neo-Nazis, as you would like to call them, they both had a hand in the escalation of the demonstration, along with the city officials that told the police to stand down, all bad in their own way. Denouncing Antifa as fascist terrorist organization.
There is at time of recording still a petition with over 200,000 signatures seeking to have Antifa categorized as a domestic terrorist group. If you are American, I strongly recommend you sign it.
They are creeps that have no idea what a Nazi is, or at least they have painted a nice little picture in their heads of what they think it is.
Including the President of the United States. Both sides of the Charlottesville thing were bad.
Which is 100% true.
And well, I'd like to concentrate on the President tomorrow, on Friday, specifically the President. Today I want to address the idea of both sides.
Great. So you're going to give us your thoughts on horseshoe theory. I can hardly wait.
I'm smack dab in the middle of editing a very important documentary on the issue of horseshoe theory. Now, horseshoe theory, of course, posits that the political spectrum isn't a line, but rather a horseshoe, and at the end you have the two extremes, left and right, and they get closer to each other. Get it?
Indeed, this is not just for the political left and right, also for other groups that have radical factions within them. MGTOW versus feminists, for instance. They both want the same thing, more or less. They just want the power to be on one side, and they want to demonize the other side. So do Antifa and the far right as well. Antifa wants to use force to get rid of unwanted groups and individuals. This does not mean just Nazis or far right. It can be anyone that opposes Antifa. And all that has to be done is to be labeled a Nazi, and they're good to go. The Nazis want a white ethno-state. This will require a hell of a lot of deportations, but will most likely require violence to get rid of unwanted people. This would include, but not be limited to, mixed race people, Jews, Muslims, black people, Hispanics, Asians, communists, feminists, and anyone with bad things to say about Nazis. So they have similar goals, just different points on how to get it done and who to blame. Horseshoe in effect.
It's basically the centrist way of saying both sides are bad. Which is, by the way, just an inherently centrist thing to do.
Well, aren't both sides bad then? Innocent people are getting hurt by both sides. And let's not forget all the innocent trash cans that have been brutally assaulted and maimed by Antifa. How is that not bad?
Wow, those are some really badass moves. You've really got to feel for those poor, defenseless bins.
But in all seriousness though, Antifa uses hidden weapons for maximum damage. We all know how a mob works. You lose yourself in them. Your individuality goes out the window, and you do shit that you would not ever even dream about doing if you weren't in said mob.
Which can essentially be boiled down to Antifa being simply known as pussies.
So are you saying that going around hurting people is a good thing then?
And the reason I want to talk about this specifically before we talk about Donald Trump, because I think there's two separate issues here. The way centrists have been attempting to paint the left as some sort of evil organization on the same level as Nazis, and Donald Trump accepting their framework because he knows they can't argue it.
I think the main mistake you make is that you assume that centrists, in some uniform way, pigeonhole all leftists under one banner. We know there are very different types of leftists. Everyone knows this.
If people are painting the entire left like this, then they are morons. There are factions within the left,
Like I just stated,
i.e. communists and Antifa mainly.
they are the same thing, Sith.
These groups are in their own way just as bad as the far right, because they advocate for violence too.
I would prefer to say they are okay with using violence to achieve their goal of some pathetic utopia that will never exist.
So let's concentrate on the centrists for today. Now, my horseshoe theory thing is currently clocking in at about a half hour long, so this isn't going to be as detailed, but both sides is essentially a framework to say we should never change anything the status quo is good.
You are wrong. In this instance, so context is important. It means both sides need to be spoken to, both sides need to speak, these discussions need to happen, and a middle ground needs to be found. If the majority of the population don't agree with them, which in this case they don't, who on earth is on the side of Antifa? Privileged middle-class kids moaning about privileged people. Oh, and then you've got the other side, a bunch of racists. Fantastic. The majority of society don't care about them. The majority of society want discussion. The majority of society would rather do that than see their towns burned, which is what both sides are doing, which is pathetic.
Who ever said that? Damn straw man. Granted that I can't speak for all centrists, there are quite a few of us.
Weirdos.
Some even reject the label, but they could still technically be considered centrist.
I feel like you threw that in there for me.
But if something needs changing, then change it after debates, info, and facts are presented. Sometimes the status quo is a good thing, but not always.
Now here's the issue. Obviously, the status quo is not good. The status quo leaves 30 million people without healthcare.
While I can agree with this statement, as a Swede with universal healthcare implemented in my country,
And as an Englishman with similar privileges.
what many people fail to realize is that making such implements in America would take generations to work properly. But people want results now, and then you get a Venezuela on your hands.
I personally wouldn't go so far as to say Venezuela, but I would say that with a developed nation to then introduce the healthcare that is either similar or near identical to that of what White Sith Male or I have access to is not possible. It's not feasible. Your country is too large, and your country, let's face it, is at the mercy of insurers and pharmaceutical companies that seek to make profit.
It leaves LGBT people without specific protections that keep the President of the United States from essentially reversing any progress made for them.
What specific protection do they need?
I have a strange feeling this is less about what LGBT people need, and simply a sly little reference that gets people thinking about the trans ban in the military, which, of course, with quite a number of people, causes significant outrage.
Democrats might be dropping their support for abortion because, I don't know, maybe state-mandated birth is good. A lot of disingenuous crap is going on. That's the bottom line. The status quo is not good. It is good for some, and that means for a lot of other people, it is not. You know, because we live in an economic and social system that specifically takes away from some in order to make the lives of others comfortable.
That kinda sounds a little communist, actually. So are you against capitalism then? You could have fooled me. You're asking for financial support in the end of your video. You have patrons. You get money from advertisers. Taking money to make your own life a little more comfortable. No?
Now, if you're supporting the quote-unquote center, it brings, of course, the golden mean fallacy into play.
For those who don't know, The golden mean fallacy is where the desired result between two opposing factions is deemed to be a compromise and the truth. That, in the case of what you've been talking about so far, is not true at all. To deal with both these two sides, there is no compromise with what they believe. Their actions, there is a compromise. Stop. But what they believe? No, there is no compromise for that. It's going to take a lot of education to have them understand that they are in the wrong.
A lot of issues do have a middle. They do have a compromise. However, a lot of issues are not right and left. They're left and wrong. I'm sorry, I meant right and wrong, but right as in morally right.
Heh.
On a lot of those issues, you can't actually compromise. For instance, Nazis. You can't compromise with Nazis. There's no such thing as compromising with Nazis. If you think that you can compromise with Nazis, you are slightly Nazi-like.
I agree. You can't compromise with people that want to hurt or kill others because of some notion of what is right and just. Nor can the communists that want to kill others be compromised with either. And Antifa clearly comes out on the side of communists. They want to use violence against their adversaries too.
Quite often you hear the argument given to people of other beliefs or ideologies, go back to your country, because those people who say it are retarded. But if people love communism so much, there are some countries that still employ it today. I see no reason why they shouldn't simply relocate there rather than terrorize an entire town, city, village, state, county, wherever it is they are disturbing the peace. And as for these neo-Nazis, perhaps we can find them a small island somewhere where they can live out their fantasies without peddling such bad ideas.
And they will not be swayed from what I've seen. Hence, no point in compromising with either of these groups.
Okay, I'm gonna stop coming up with ideas now, because I might be accused of coming up with and then some fallacy name for it.
And there's really no way to get around that. That's what you are. If you think that people who want to remove other ethnicities from this country, a country that is built upon the idea that all people are created equally and that we all retain some degree of freedom, people who wish to change that specifically to only apply to certain people, the golden mean between Nazi and not Nazi is what? Kinda Nazi? Nazi on the weekend?
Nope. We are choosing to oppose both the far right and the far left. Nazis, as you put it, and the communistic and equally violent Antifa, we are choosing not to stand with either of these asinine groups.
Well, I can safely say neither group represents what I truly believe, which is and has always been: no lives matter.
Do you share custody of the Nazism with the Nazis? Like, you take it on the weekends and they handle it during the week? I don't, like what? The golden mean between gassing the Jews and not gassing the Jews is giving the Jews a little bit of gas, I guess. And this is specifically why I want to talk about both sides in this issue, because the actual thing that we are choosing from is Nazi and not Nazi. So if you're trying to find the middle there, you're automatically trending towards Nazi.
Not standing with Antifa does not make you a Nazi by default.
Yeah, this isn't some guilt by association thing, and it certainly isn't, there's a fallacy for it, I'm sure of it. Just because I've dismissed one idea doesn't mean I believe in the other, and in this case, that is definitely the case.
You're going to gas the Jews a little bit. If there's any Nazi in the equation, you're trending towards Nazi.
Nope.
So can we turn this around then? If there is Antifa in the mix and you don't stand against them, then you are for the violence and the authoritarian style of government they want to implement. Then you are for a full communistic regime. Same equivalent here, asshat. And not many people on the left are disavowing Antifa from what I've seen.
So both sides are bad is a means for you to, without saying you're a Nazi or even possibly thinking you're a Nazi, be a Nazi. And the people who came up with this specifically are centrists like Jonathan Chait and Sally Albright. These people have used this framework nonstop for over a year. In some cases, 2 years. There's a lot of time that has been spent calling the left the alt-left?
First of all, I personally think it's a stupid term.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I've only heard of the term alt-left very recently, and I've done some digging. I can't find many references to it.
But people on the left should embrace it. It represents the extreme and violent part of the left.
Whether those on the left want to accept it or not is up to them. I don't care enough. I am, however, somewhat glad that the media is finally starting to see Antifa for what it is. It has taken you long enough, you disingenuous fake news outlets.
There have been a number of people, including myself, saying this is just going to help validate the Nazis, which is exactly what it does. In the both sides framework, which is a binary, it binarizes the idea of the alt-right. It makes it so that there is a logical counterweight, which you can criticize equally. But here's the thing, you're putting Nazis and racists, white supremacists, white nationalists on the same level as people who've been advocating for healthcare and LGBT rights. So, what?
And you are equating the right to being solely that. Racist, Nazis, white supremacists. See what I did there? I used your kind of logic to make a false equivalence. Also, hasn't it occurred to you that if it were not for the violent acts, we would be ostracizing, we would be chastising, we would be criticizing the right, those in the far right anyway, for pushing those ideas. We would be arguing about the ideas and not about the fact that both sides are being violent. We wouldn't be talking about the violence, would we? We'd be talking about the bad ideas. Unfortunately, because of the descent into chaos, our attentions have been taken elsewhere to point out just how stupid using violence truly is. What do you think, Sith?
No. For Jeebus' sake, you're even more stupid than you look. The far right are not at the same level as normal people protesting, advocating for LGBT rights, healthcare, and so forth. Their counterweight is the violent and extreme parts of the left. In other words, Antifa, BLM, and other extreme groups. These are the two countersides. I don't mind listening to rational thoughts from either the left or the right. But when it has to include violence from either side, just fuck the hell off.
Binarizing it within centrist framework, it validates it. Now, on a more dialectic or scientific method-oriented approach, it probably wouldn't do the same thing. However, in a marketplace of ideas situation, in which all opinions must be given platforms, and the people must choose what is correct, this absolutely validates the alt-right.
I have a sneaky feeling that your condescension is an indication that you are pro-censorship.
I've been yelling about the marketplace of ideas for a long time now. I've made tons of content on it. And centrism, both sides, horseshoe theory, these are all products of the marketplace of ideas. These are all things one can invest in or buy in the marketplace of ideas. And that, my friends, is the problem. Continually giving debunked, disproven, or otherwise bigoted views a microphone and a platform is continually allowing the customer, who is always right, to choose it as valid.
Yes, Peter, that is the price of freedom. One gets to make the informed and educated decision as to what idea they wish to put themselves behind. Removing the ideas altogether runs the risk of us making the same mistakes in the past. These ideas have to exist and they have to be discussed. It is an endless cycle, yes, but that is the price you pay for freedom. And I can think of quite a lot of ideas that have been debunked, that I wish would go away, but don't. And am I telling them to go away? No. I'm just going to keep repeating myself, in the vain hope that one more person gets the point.
So, are we going to do the same for the leftist ideas then? The wage gap debunked due to the lack of understanding of statistics, misleading rape statistics to fuel a rape culture that is not there. Will these ideas also be purged from the marketplace of ideas then? Because once you start down that road, you will regret it. Who is to decide what is right and should be allowed in the marketplace then? Who should we give the authority to then? This is a very important question.